Right, so I'm going to talk about, well, I'm going to start talking about Dover Court. And I wrote about Dover Court in Urban Design Journal a couple of years ago. This is a great photo by Tom Bright of a family at Dover Court. That's what great architecture is all about. It's about people and making their lives easier, more enjoyable, more pleasurable to live through design. You might be familiar with this photo. It's done the rounds. Great scheme. It was a large scheme. It's as much about landscape as architecture. The whole estate has been transformed. Ultimately, it's an infill housing project. Still a relatively new strategy in Britain, infill housing. When done well, it's a great idea. Dover Court, I think, sets a strong benchmark, and it was shortlisted last year for the Neve Brown Award. One of the keys to its success, I feel, it's not central, but it's certainly part of it, was deck access. This is a deck access building here, sort of tucked in between the trees and the Georgian housing that you see there. You might not guess that. Obviously, the decks are hidden from view. And these decks were actually co-designed with the residents. These were older residents who we had to do a little bit of demolition, just one building on the estate, and they were rehoused in this building and had a key role in designing it. But, as historian Miles Glendinning has pointed out in his amazing book Tower Block from the 90s, you must read it, it's like a history of council housing in the UK. He argued there's probably never been another feature in UK public housing which has been so widely criticised and at the same time so widely used as deck access to blocks of flats. In British TV, deck access is often a symbol of urban decline. It's a sort of Gothic architectural element in that respect. In Line of Duty's first episode, this is in 2012, a police raid goes wrong in a deck access flat. Season 3 of Luther, the hero confronts a villain on the decks of Robin Hood Gardens. And even Doctor Who, children's TV isn't free from this. Rose Tyler is whisked away by the Doctor from the Powell estate, it's called. It's actually the Brandon estate in Kennington. Lots of deck access there. So she escaped deck access and had fun out in the universe. So it's seen as a bad thing, deck access. Oh, what happened there? This one is particularly shocking. In the early 2000s, we all probably just looked at this and thought, oh, that's a really interesting, powerful symbol of the Channel 4 logo there. But this is actually people's homes, This was a rundown corner of the Aylesbury estate. So we're kind of, mocking deck access flats and enjoying it in a sort of creative way here. It's not a very nice situation, really, to find ourselves in. There's all sorts of reasons why deck access is thought of in this way. Alice Coleman's Utopia on Trial demonised post-war public housing, and deck access was seen as unsafe and even ineligible for right to buy. Lenders just wouldn't issue mortgages to people living in deck access homes. But that book was just a channel for wider global neoliberal policies at the time. There was a huge take back and monetization of public land going on across the whole planet, really. It's still ongoing. But that was Lancelot Keyes that we just saw there. Now, he used to be a RIBA president, but he also used to be in charge of Liverpool's housing in the 30s and delivered these absolutely brilliant schemes. This is St Andrews, it's called, St Andrews Gardens. But he described deck access homes as housing for dirty people. So there is this terrible culture in our profession to kind of have this kind of distance from the people we design for sometimes. I'm just going to ram the point home finally with this quote from Alison Smithson. Now, she was interviewed in 1976 by Jane Dark, and she was explaining how misunderstood Robin Hood Gardens was by the residents. Misunderstood by the residents. And as you can see, not very nice things that she said. I think we need to reevaluate some of our heroes, really, in the architectural profession. It's always about class in the end. always comes back to class in the UK. And that's very much the truth of deck access. This is kind of ground zero for deck access. It's Henry Roberts' 1849 Streatham Street housing for the deserving poor. So even right at the beginning, there's like, well, some of the poor people are deserving, and we will make houses for them with open-air galleries that will improve their health, etc. So it's embedded in the notion of public housing. This is a Punch cartoon, The Nemesis of Neglect, that was targeting landlords at the time in the capital's dire slums. One of the ones that was targeted particularly was Old Nickel, which was cleared to make way for the Boundary Estate, which we see here actually being built. You can see the plans of the foundations there. It's an amazing photo. I mean, actually, this was the first council housing, if we're going to be strictly factually sort of accurate. It was London City Council, and it was built. It was, but yeah, exactly. But it goes back a long way. The previous stuff was sort of philanthropic. This is the society saying, actually, we need to do this. But some of the earliest deck access schemes. This is the Bourne Estate, 1901, 763 mostly deck access homes in grand 5-storey blocks. Swan Lane and Rotherhithe was completed at the same time. That's the drawing to the other side. So very high quality, really interesting pieces of architecture as well. But it wasn't just London where this was happening. Cities like Liverpool and Manchester saw plenty of experiments. This is Edinburgh. Patrick and Anna Geddes refurbished Tron Square, which was an old medieval building, added decks to them over 10 years. The idea was to bring light and air into this historic tenement kind of environment. This is Glasgow. This is Rotten Row, housing for the Workmen's Dwelling Company. It includes these social spaces, a library, a kitchen, a drawing room, communal halls. So it was showcasing early thinking around what deck access might enable even then. So it was an interesting housing type from the start. I think these images work quite nicely. This is, as you know, an image of St. Elia's sort of Futurism-inspired architecture. This was the big idea in Europe at the start of the 20th century. Italian futurists were embracing a sort of tech-forward vision of life, architecture that moved, it was elevated and connected, and there's kind of high-level kind of walkways in this building here. There was never any futurist building as such, but this is probably the closest example that we've got. It's 1923 Lingotto car factory, Turin. This rooftop racetrack embodied this mindset. It's separating people and cars. It's just doing it the other way around. It's putting cars on top and people on the ground. So this was a big idea, and everybody was noticing. Corbusier noticed. He's up there on the top floor. Of course, he noticed. He's more of a PR man than an architect, I would say. Fritz Lang noticed. It says the Metropolis movie set that was being built at the time. It features buildings with elevated walkways that the set builders are actually installing here. And Adolf Loos noticed as well. This is 1923. This is his proposed Terrassen house in Vienna. And again, this was social housing. It was housing for the poor, urban poor. But the Dutch got there first, really, with a sort of modern deck access. This is in Rotterdam, Michael Brinkman's scheme at Spangen. It's probably the first true modern deck access scheme, 1922. It's sort of first floor maisonettes opened onto wide concrete decks. See that kink? Oh, there it is. That's Robin Hood Gardens. I'm sure that's been copied, absolutely sure. We know how it works, right? This is what architects do in a good way. We see something we like and we copy it. But as with Dover Court, same with Spangen, it's ultimately a place for people. It's full of life. Love this photo. Absolutely love it. It's just about, that's what it's all about, right? That's what it's all about. And it was also a place of milk floats. Now, milk floats have this weird sort of history with deck access. Like wherever we hear about deck access, we hear about milk floats as well, as you will see. So Britain was a bit slow to kind of adopt this kind of modernist approach. This is the Ossulston estate in King's Cross, sort of borrowed from Austrian modernism, but it's dressed up in arts and crafts. We had to wait until this, really, to get modernism, and we saw the Gascoigne estate go from deck access housing like that to that in a decade. So this is pre-war 1940s style deck access or balcony access, gallery access, and then here we've got your hardcore deck access Corbusian sort of architecture emerging. It's a big deal. It also gave rise, the post-war kind of housing rebuild, to this new kind of townscape, you know, this Park Hill, the sort of granddaddy or queen bee of modern deck access housing.
You've gone over.
I'm gonna have to carry on because I've got to leave at 8. I can't hang about for this, and trust me, it'll be worth it. Trust me, it'll be worth it. So, as I said, it's about families. It's always about families. We have to remember that. You know, Alison Smithson did not remember that. We have to remember that it's about families. This is another bloody milk flow on a deck access scheme. What is it? What's going on with this? I suppose it does embody an idea of society. Corbusier, again, is involved. This is the most visited scheme of the 50s by local authorities in Britain. It's one of Marseille. And it's a rue intérieure, but you know, it's an elevated street, and that was sort of copied but put outside here. This is a lovely image by the Smithsons. This is their Green Lanes entry. It didn't win, but this image was widely published. It was perhaps influenced Park Hill's decks as well. But again, we can see that that perspective is borrowed from Corbusier's image here of the Aquitania, Clyde-built ship in the 1910s, wide decks. That's why we call it deck access rather than gallery access or whatever. But this was the world into which the housing was emerging at the time. Everything was deck access, everything. And, you know, this is an industry advert at the time. And even, again, here, if you read, anyone who has ever walked in the medieval first floor levels of Chester will see where we drew our inspiration for unit mid-rise. Yeah, right. A wide access deck is the principal design feature of the 4 to 7 story group of flats and maisonettes. So it's being promoted, separating vehicles from cars. This elevated street takes prams and small vehicles such as milk floats. Okay. And for a while it worked. You know, there was full employment. Houses were looked after, rents were low, people had jobs. This was a Starling and Gowan scheme in Preston. Some projects became beloved. Dawson's Heights here, designed when she was just 26. Residents seem to love it. Open house visitors love it. The mood changed in the 70s. As you know, there's a shift away from collectivism. New kinds of capitalism are gaining traction. This is actually the housing estate in that mid-rise advert. It was a real place. It was demolished in 1983, like about 16 years after it was built. And now it looks like this. So apart from the odd 90s exception, like this high-tech banger from 1999, political and cultural forces ensured deck access housing disappeared until the 2010s. And we started to see projects like this, infill at the Bourne estate. So new deck access in an old deck access scheme. Reuse, an old stables in Glasgow being converted into housing. Park Hill, redone in a slightly different way, controversial but interesting. I'm sure David can tell us more about that as well. This isn't David's scheme, but he's done his work up there with his colleagues. We've done some deck access in later living, so it can be used in all sorts of ways, and we're starting to see it sort of coming back. And so, you know, we saw that coming back in the 2020s, in the 2010s. In the 2020s, it's actually competing for the Sterling Prize now. That's why we wrote this book. Why are we seeing deck access again? We're seeing deck access again because of dual aspect housing. There's demand for dual aspect housing. It's the easiest way to do it. It's the best way to do it. The book focuses on history. It focuses on case studies, and it looks at technical aspects as well. And it won an award I should say, as Architecture Guide of the Year last year. And finally, we are doing deck access again, 100% council housing. This is Walter Tull House in Tottenham. And I think we're showing that it can be disassociated from urban blight and doom and gloom. And we really need to adopt it. We need to tell our clients to start believing in deck access again. This is very high quality architecture, very different approach. But I think the real litmus test will be when the BBC does some kind of romantic social sort of story set on a deck access that starts like that. Thank you very much.